Welcome to Nocturnal Ledger. There are places in this world where the fabric of reality is worn thin, eroded not by time or wind, but by the sheer weight of human misery. We often tell ourselves that stone and mortar are inanimate, that a house is merely a collection of materials assembled to keep out the cold. But history suggests otherwise. History written in police blotters, coroners' reports, and the terrified whispers of witnesses tells us that tragedy leaves a residue. It stains the floorboards and seeps into the limestone foundations, waiting for the sun to go down so it can scream again. Tonight, we turn our gaze to St. Louis, Missouri. We are traveling back to the turn of the 20th century, to an era of gaslight and industrial tycoons, to examine the collapse of an American dynasty. This is not a campfire tale invented to scare children. This is a forensic examination of the Lemp family, the beer barons who built a kingdom on lager and limestone, only to be systematically dismantled by madness, suicide, and a darkness that refuses to leave their family home. The structure stands at 3,322 DeMenil Place. It is a brooding Victorian mansion, imposing and severe, perched above a labyrinth of natural caves that run deep beneath the city streets. Today, it is considered one of the most haunted locations in America, a claim backed by decades of documented phenomena. But to understand the ghosts, we must first understand the living hell that created them. The story begins with absolute triumph. Johann Adam Lemp arrived in St. Louis from Germany in 1838. He didn't just bring a recipe for lager, he brought a vision. He discovered that the natural limestone caves beneath St. Louis maintained a constant, cool temperature, perfect for lagering beer before the invention of artificial refrigeration. The Lemp Brewery was born from the underground. It rose from the dark, damp earth to become a titan of industry. By the time Johann's son, William J. Lemp Sr., took the reins, the family was American royalty. They were the symbol of the Gilded Age dream. They had money, power, and influence. They built the mansion in 1868, a 33-room palace radiating opulence. But there is a physics to tragedy. The higher you rise, the more catastrophic the fall. The unraveling began in 1901. William Lemp Sr. had a favorite son, Frederick. Frederick was the heir apparent, the golden child destined to carry the empire into the new century. But in 1901, at the young age of 28, Frederick died of heart failure. It was sudden, shocking, and it broke something inside William Sr. that could never be repaired. Witnesses and servants at the time reported a drastic change in the patriarch. The once commanding tycoon became a ghost in his own home. He withdrew from society. He stopped going to the brewery that bore his name. He began to obsess over the caves beneath the mansion, the dark, silent tunnels where the family fortune had been brewed. He would walk through the house like a specter, his eyes fixed on things no one else could see. On the morning of February 13th, 1904, the tension in the house snapped. It was a cold, gray morning in St. Louis. William Sr. woke up in his bedroom on the second floor. He did not dress for work. He did not call for breakfast. According to the police report filed that day, at approximately 10:15 in the morning, a single gunshot echoed through the cavernous hallways of the mansion. Servants rushed to the master bedroom. They found the door locked. After forcing their way in, they discovered William Lemp Sr. lying on his bed. a Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver still clutched in his hand. He had shot himself in the right temple. The richest man in St. Louis, a man who had everything the world could offer, chose to leave it violently. He was the first, he would not be the last. The suicide of William Sr. cast a pall over the mansion that is arguably never lifted. But the horror was just beginning. The empire passed to his son, William Lemp Jr., known as Billy. Billy was a different breed. He was a playboy, a socialite, a man who tried to drown the family's grief in champagne and parties. He converted the mansion into a showpiece of excess. He installed a lavish swimming pool in the basement, accessible through the caves. He threw wild parties while the family business faced the looming threat of prohibition. Billy Jr. married a society beauty named Lillian Handlan. It should have been a fairy tale, but the walls of the Lemp Mansion seemed to corrode love. Lillian was known as the Lavender Lady because of her penchant for wearing the color lavender and using lavender-scented perfumes. But her life inside the mansion was a nightmare of infidelity and isolation. Billy's behavior became erratic. He was known to bring women into the home, flaunting his affairs. The marriage disintegrated in a bitter, public divorce in 1908. Lillian fled the house, terrified of her husband and the oppressive atmosphere of the place. In the divorce proceedings, she described a man who was paranoid, carrying a revolver at all times, a man hunted by his own demons. But the Lemp curse didn't just target the men. It came for the daughter, Elsa Lemp. Elsa was the wealthiest heiress in St. Louis. She had escaped the mansion, or so she thought. But the depression that infected the bloodline followed her. On March 20th, 1920, the second blow struck. Elsa, suffering from severe insomnia and a crumbling marriage, lay down in her bed in her own home, just a few blocks from the family mansion. She took a .32 caliber revolver and shot herself in the heart. The news devastated the family. But the most terrifying chapter was yet to be written. Prohibition had arrived. The 18th Amendment shattered the Lemp Empire. The brewery, a sprawling industrial complex that covered 10 city blocks, was sold for a fraction of its value. The caves were sealed. The beer stopped flowing. Billy Lemp Jr., the man who had tried to party away the darkness, found himself alone in the mansion. The silence that had consumed his father now consumed him. He oversaw the dismantling of the family legacy. On December 29, 1922, 18 years almost to the day after his father's suicide, Billy Jr. sat at his massive desk in the office on the main floor. It was the room where he had conducted business, where he had signed the papers selling off the brewery. According to the coroner's report, Billy shot himself in the chest. He died in the very room that is now used as a dining area. It is said that he did not die instantly. He bled out on the floor, surrounded by the silent portraits of his ancestors. 3 suicides: a father, a sister, a son. The public began to whisper. They called it the Lemp Curse. They said the money was tainted, that the caves were a portal to something foul. But the family refused to leave. The mansion passed to Charles Lemp, the 3rd son. Charles was different. He was a recluse, a germaphobe, a man deeply terrified of the outside world. He lived in the mansion for decades, watching the city change while the house remained a mausoleum of memories. As he aged, his behavior became increasingly disturbing. He developed obsessive-compulsive rituals. He was constantly washing his hands, constantly checking locks. Charles lived with his dog, a Doberman Pinscher that was his only companion, and the bond between the man and the animal was intense. But in 1949, the darkness came for Charles. He was 77 years old. He had lived through the suicides of his father, his brother, and his sister. He knew the history better than anyone. On May 10th, 1949, Charles Lemp made his final decision. But unlike the others, his death involved a shocking act of violence against the only thing he loved. He took his revolver and shot his beloved dog in the head. Then, he turned the gun on himself. He was found in his bed, the dead dog lying next to him. But it was the note he left behind that chills the blood of anyone who reads it. It was brief, devoid of emotion, and terrifyingly pragmatic. It read, "In case I am found dead, blame it on no one but me. 4 suicides, the same family, the same blood, and for 3 of them, the same roof." The Lemp bloodline eventually withered away. The mansion was sold, turned into a boarding house, reaching a state of severe dilapidation. It became a flophouse, a place where transients stayed for a night and left in a hurry, telling stories of sounds they couldn't explain. In the 1970s, the Pointer family purchased the estate to renovate it into a restaurant and inn. This is where the historical record transitions into present-day horror. During the renovations, workers were plagued by phenomena that defy scientific explanation. We are not talking about creaky floorboards or drafts. We are talking about aggressive, sentient activity. Construction workers reported tools vanishing and reappearing in impossible places. They reported the overwhelming sensation of being watched from the shadows. Several workers walked off the job and refused to return after witnessing apparitions. One painter, working alone in the wing where Billy Jr. died, reported feeling a hand shove him from his ladder. When he turned, the room was empty. Since opening to the public, the volume of eyewitness testimony has become staggering. These are not just thrill seekers. These are skeptics, police officers, and restaurant staff who have gone on record with their experiences. Let's break down the specific, recurring phenomena that have been documented at the Lemp Mansion. First, there is the Lavender Lady. To this day, staff and guests report the sudden, overwhelming scent of lavender perfume in the hallways, specifically near the staircase and the room that once belonged to Lillian. This scent is often accompanied by a sudden, drastic drop in temperature. We're talking about a localized cold spot where you can see your breath, even in the heat of a Missouri summer. Witnesses have reported seeing a woman in a flowing, old-fashioned dress standing at the top of the stairs, staring down with a look of profound sadness before dissolving into mist. Then there is the activity in Billy Jr.'s room. This is arguably the most active area in the house. Guests who have stayed in the suite report hearing the distinct sound of someone pacing the floorboards at 3 a.m. Heavy, booted footsteps, back and forth, back and forth. The pacing of a man contemplating the end. There have been reports of doors locking and unlocking by themselves. Not a mechanical failure, but the sound of a deadbolt sliding home, are followed by the rattle of a doorknob being tested from the other side. When staff open the door with a master key, the room is empty. But perhaps the most disturbing legend associated with the house is that of the Monkey Boy. This is a story that was whispered for years in St. Louis. A dark secret the family tried to bury, The legend claims that Billy Jr. had an illegitimate son, a boy born with visible physical deformities, possibly Down syndrome or hydrocephalus. In the cruel context of the early 1900s, such a child was considered a stain on the family honor. The story goes that this boy, whose name may have been Zeke, was hidden away in the attic of the mansion. He was never allowed to leave. He spent his entire life locked in the dusty, stifling heat of the attic, staring out of a small window at the world he could never join. People walking by on the street below would report seeing a strange, distorted face peering down at them. Today, visitors to the attic report a very specific, heartbreaking type of haunting. They find toys moved around. They hear the soft, weeping sound of a child. Paranormal investigators have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, in the attic that sound like a young voice asking, "Play?" There is a psychological weight to the Lemp Mansion that cannot be quantified. When you step inside, the air feels different. It is heavy, thick. It is the atmosphere of a place that has absorbed too much pain. The main staircase, a beautiful winding piece of architecture, feels like a descent. In the dining room, which was once the office where Billy Jr. killed himself, the activity is often poltergeist-like. Glasses have been seen sliding off tables. Chairs scrape against the floor when no one is near them. The staff have developed a relationship with these entities. They don't provoke them. They acknowledge them. They say good morning to empty rooms because they know the rooms aren't really empty. Paranormal investigators have spent countless nights in the mansion. The results are consistent and unnerving. During one investigation, a team set up a static camera in the hallway outside Charles Lemp's room. Reviewing the footage, they saw a shadow figure, solid and opaque, walk out of the closed door and move down the hall. It didn't float. It walked. It had mass. Another team investigating the basement, near the entrance to the caves, recorded a temperature drop of 20 degrees in 5 seconds, where their equipment batteries drained instantly, a common phenomenon in the presence of strong spirit activity. They reported a feeling of intense nausea and the sensation of hands touching their backs. We must consider the geology. The limestone caves below. Limestone is quartz-bearing. In the paranormal community, there is a theory known as the stone tape theory. It suggests that certain minerals, like limestone and quartz, can act as a recording medium. They can absorb the emotional energy of traumatic events, suicide, murder, intense grief, and replay them under the right atmospheric conditions. The Lemp Mansion sits on top of a massive deposit of this recording tape. The family didn't just live there. They poured their agony into the very foundation of the earth. The suicides were high-energy events. The gunshot, or the explosion of brain and bone. The instant transition from life to death. That energy has to go somewhere. Physics tells us energy is neither created nor destroyed. So where is it? Is it trapped in the limestone? Is the Lemp Mansion simply a playback loop, a recording of tragedy playing over and over again for eternity? Or is it something more sentient? The reports of interaction suggest intelligence. The toys moving in the attic, the hand pushing the painter, the locking of doors. These are not recordings. These are actions. This implies that the spirits of the Lemp family are not just memories. They are residents. They are trapped in the gilded cage they built for themselves. Think about the psychology of the suicide victims. William Sr., unable to cope with the loss of his son and the changing world. Billy Jr., but crushed by the weight of expectation and the failure of the business. Charles, terrified of everything, ending his life to escape his own mind. These were people defined by their attachments to this house and this business. It makes a terrifying kind of sense that they would never leave. One of the most chilling modern accounts comes from a police officer who responded to a silent alarm at the mansion in the late 1990s. The restaurant was closed. The building was secured. The alarm indicated motion on the second floor. The officer and his partner entered the building with guns drawn. They swept the first floor. Clear. They moved up the main staircase. As they reached the landing, they both heard the distinct sound of a piano playing. It was coming from the bar area. A slow, mournful tune. They rushed the room, weapons ready, when the music stopped the instant they crossed the threshold. The room was empty, but the piano bench was pulled out, and when the officer touched the keys, they were warm. There was no one in the building. No intruder, no prankster, just the silence and the lingering warmth of invisible fingers. There are also the accounts of the cave dwellers. The tunnel system that connects the mansion to the brewery is vast. Though mostly sealed off now, there are sections accessible from the basement. Staff members hate going down there. They describe a feeling of being hunted. There are shadows that move against the light. There is a smell down there, not just of damp earth, but of old, stale beer and something metallic, like copper or blood. Some speculate that the haunting isn't just the family. The caves were there long before the Lemps. Native American artifacts have been found in the area. The land itself may be charged. The Lemps might have just been the battery that powered up a much older, darker machine. We look at the timeline again. 1904, 1920, 1922, 1949. A pattern of destruction spanning half a century. And in the decades since, the phenomena haven't faded. If anything, they have become more distinct. As the mansion has been restored, as life has been brought back into the rooms in the form of dinner guests and overnight stays, the spirits seem to have been energized. It raises a disturbing question about the nature of haunting. Do we feed them? Does our fear, our curiosity, our presence in their home give them the energy to manifest? Every time a ghost hunter asks, "Is anyone here?" are they inviting the Lemp family to relive their trauma? The Lemp Mansion is a paradox. It is a place of celebration today. Weddings, dinners, murder mystery parties. But beneath the laughter and the clinking glasses, the sorrow remains. You can paint over the walls, but you cannot paint over the memory of a bullet. You can scrub the floors, but you cannot scrub away the spot where a body fell. If you visit 3322 DeMenil Place, pay attention to the silence between the sounds. Pay attention to the sudden chill that has nothing to do with the air conditioning. If you smell lavender where no flowers bloom, or if you hear the heavy tread of boots in an empty hallway, know that you are not imagining it. You are witnessing the enduring echo of a family that conquered the world, only to be conquered by the darkness within themselves. The Lemp family sought immortality through their name, like their brewery, their legacy. In a twisted, horrific way, they achieved it. They are still there. They are still walking the halls. They are still waiting. This has been a case file from the Nocturnal Ledger. The records are closed, but the ledger is never balanced. Sleep well, if you can.